I used to live in a city called Thunder Bay, which is right smack dab in the middle of Canada. And
Right.
it used to be two cities. It was Port Arthur and Fort William for many, many years. And I mean, the two cities grew into each other. It was ridiculous. So eventually they amalgamated into one city. But prior to that, at one time, they were both on different time zones. So one of them observed, so you could travel like down the street and you would be in a different time zone altogether.
Well, it's so lovely to be able to connect with you, and also on this fabulous anthology, O Night Divine, that we're all in
Yes.
together.
Yeah, it's exciting, isn't it?
It sure is. So tell me a little bit about your story.
Gosh, this past summer I wrote 3 novellas for Christmas collections. And at one point I was just confused as to which one which was which. And the one I did for O Night Divine, actually, it's set in the Victorian era, which is quite a departure for me. I've never written in that time period before. So, but I enjoy that. I like the challenge of a new researching a new period.
Is it tied into an existing series?
No, actually, I didn't do that because I don't have a series with Dragonblade that it could tie into. So I did. It's just a standalone series, and it's actually kind of inspired, which doesn't seem very Christmassy when I tell you this, but it was sort of inspired by an article I read about a disaster in 1879 that happened, where the Tay River railway bridge collapsed, and
Right.
the train and all the people fell into the Tay River. And I mean, it's like, how can that inspire you to write a Christmas story? But it did. So I based it on that. And then, of course, I don't know about you, but at the beginning, when they were sort of explaining what the theme would be and so on, there were sort of mixed messages coming across. So I started, and I actually wrote in sort of a miserly uncle figure.
Mm-hmm.
Without really, and then they talked about, well, kind of a Scrooge thought and all this. So I thought, oh, good, well, I've got that anyway. So my heroine is a young girl from Gloucestershire who is engaged to this rather priggish young man, and at the Christmas party that they have at her parents' house, she sort of realizes that while he may be a young up-and-coming barrister with great prospects, she doesn't really love him.
Mm-hmm.
Policeman who has been assigned to this out-of-the-way police station in Gloucestershire, I can't even say it, in Gloucestershire, because he was wounded he was instrumental in protecting Queen Victoria from an assassination attempt, and so he got wounded in the thigh with this stabbed in the thigh. So he walks with quite a pronounced limp. So you've got these 2 individuals. She actually meets him at the policeman's Christmas ball, and so the 2 of them sort of hit it off. But then there is these Irish independent people have this plot to blow up this new bridge that the hero's uncle has engineered and designed and built. So while it may not seem a very Christmassy theme, the title of the story is A Thrill of Hope, and it's the story of how he manages to catch the perpetrators of this crime that causes the bridge to blow up. But the whole idea is that there's always hope that humanity will overcome these mean-spirited plotters, intent
Absolutely. I think there's there's a great tradition of slightly unconventional Christmas stories. Charles Dickens did a lot. Was it M.R. James did ghost stories for Christmas, and also thinking of Dickens, The Signalman is another one that comes to mind. So I love the idea of sort of creating that Christmas cozy experience. So, and it sounds like that's the theme you've gone with there.
Well, I sort of enjoyed it because, you know, as we got more into sort of the guidelines, and they talked about you know, a kind of a spirit element of it. So I had my hero having these sort of visions that he doesn't really pay much attention to at first, but these voices telling him, you know, warning him about things that are going to transpire and where to find these perpetrators. So anyway, but the thing was,
I love it.
I think it's probably the shortest novella that I've ever written, and it was hard to constrain myself, you know, to 15,000 words. I could have gone on and written a heck of a... Anyway, we'll see how it turns out.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to reading all of them. And this is what I really, really love, that you can give a set of authors a theme and a set of dot points and say, go away and come back with something. And they're all 100% different.
Yes, well, this will be the interesting thing, won't it? You know, there were sort of general guidelines in the beginning, but you're right that everybody will come up with probably completely different things, because we all have our different, and we all write in different ways. You know, I mean, I'm a pantser, so I tend to sort of make stuff up as I go along, you know. I mean, the story turned out completely differently from what initially I thought it would be, but that's fine too. I mean, that's, you know, you get your heroes and heroines into these predicaments and then you have to find a way out for them.
Yes, you do. And often they emerge from that situation in a way that sort of you didn't originally expect. Or I'm sort of halfway between a plotter and a pantser. I've got a general idea, but sometimes it just happens in the moment.
Well, I find one of my things that I always say is, when you get stuck and you're not quite sure, you have to listen to the characters and let the characters tell their story, and they will solve the story for you if you really listen to and get to know them, and the way they're thinking and what they want, and, you know, what they need in their lives. They'll tell you the story.
That's the fun part. And I was saying this to Alexa just the other day, that these characters are not figments of our imagination. They are fully fleshed. They already exist and live, but we as authors have got to draw that out and get it onto paper.
And I think once you start to dream about your characters, then they are real too. You know, they become the characters. I mean, they become more than just the words on the page. Yes, they are the characters. I found that, to be honest, that's one of the problems of writing something so short, that you're just sort of getting to know the characters, and then you have to leave them. You know, so that I found that hard in that story.
What's the average length of your novels?
Most of my novels, I would say, are 60 to 70,000. That's usually what I aim for, you know, in that realm. As far as novellas go, probably 25, you know, to 30, something like that.
Yeah.
If I read something, if I you know, purchase an ebook, I very rarely purchase anything that's like 100,000 words, because I don't have the patience to read it. You know, it's just, I like something 60,000 words, you know, take me a couple of nights to read it. That's good for me. So I tend not to write like epic, 100,000 word epics sort of thing. My very first book was probably my longest book. It was 80-odd thousand, I guess, but that was, well, actually, my very first attempt at something to publish, I got a bit carried away and I wrote 200,000 words.
Wow.
But then I realized, there's too many heroes and heroines. There's too many subplots and plots, and because I was trying to cover several generations of one family, and too many people hopping in and out of bed, so I split all that into 4 books, and that worked out better. So I published the 4 books in quick succession, and they sold better than the 200,000 word one would have done.
I've noticed that. Cheers. I'm on the which it's too well. It's too late for coffee. It's too early for wine. So
well, it's just the right time. Just the right time for a nice glass of wine after dinner.
It sure is.
So is it Monday there? It's Monday there.
It is. It's Monday.
Yeah.
So yeah, I remember Charles Schulz, who does the Peanut comics. He had a saying, "Don't worry about tomorrow; it's already tomorrow in Australia."
Yeah. I've actually been to Australia.
Oh, lovely! Whereabouts did you get to?
Well, I had, at the time that I came there, I had an aunt and uncle and a couple of cousins who lived in Newcastle, actually in Charleston near Newcastle in New South Wales. So I visited them in, oh gosh, in the dark ages, it seems now, a long time. I remember feeling we were so long on the plane to get there. I remember feeling that I had actually been born on that plane. I had never had any other existence except on that plane.
It does get that way. I do envy people say who live in the UK. Oh, I'll just go over to France for the long weekend, and it's sort of well, it would take us an entire long weekend to get there. Yeah.
Yes, well, and I'm sure, if I was to go to Australia again, it's probably a lot faster now than it was. I mean, this is probably 30 years ago since I flew to Australia. And so it was interesting. It was an interesting experience.
17 hours from the west coast of the United States to Australia. So, yeah. Basically, as long as they've got something good to watch on the in-flight.
Well, and of course, at that time, we were dependent. I don't remember there being any movies or anything. It was just, I flew Qantas at the time. And boy, they certainly took care of us, I must say. I mean, we were fed, wonderful meals. And that was the highlight of the trip, when they came around with a meal. It was like, whoa, yeah. A break in the monotony. And coming back from Australia, just tell you this little anecdote. My uncle and auntie, my uncle was kind of, he's passed away now, but he's one of these, he was a typical Lancashire lad in a way, that he just couldn't see his way to actually driving up to the door of the airport to drop me off. And it was pouring rain, absolutely pouring torrential rain. So he had to park in the parking lot. We had to walk to so by the time I got on the plane, I was drenched. I was absolutely drenched. But I happened to sit next to a young fella and his mother on the plane. And after we had taken off, the stewardess came around and said to him, would you like to come upstairs now, sir? Well, it turned out he worked for Qantas. And he and his mother were taken up to the first class floor, above. It was like 2-story thing. And he turned to me and he said, would you like to come with us? Yep, I would. Certainly, yeah. So I actually spent the return journey in first class, managed to dry out and, slept in first class. So it was
fantastic.
Yeah.
So what are you working on at the moment?
Well, actually, I had contracted with Dragonblade over a year ago now to do after I've just finished a series with Dragonblade for the last three books of my Clash of the Tartans series, about the
Cute. I
lighter side
like it.
of clan feuding.
So cute.
So
I love that series.
yeah, it was fun to do. It was the first series I did that was kind of on the lighter side with a little bit of romantic comedy, you know, so I enjoyed that break because all my medieval stuff is sort of dramatic, you know, and betrayals and conspiracies and all this. So at the same time that I contracted to do that, I was also contracted to do a series of 3 Tudor books set in the Elizabethan era. Anyway, in discussions with Kathryn, we've decided to shelve that. And instead, I'm going to write 3 Regency books because, to be honest, it's Regency that's the big market thing right now.
Yeah.
So I'm actually having fun with that. Interestingly enough, I've set the first book in Lancashire. And it's the first book of all the books I've written that I've actually set in my home county. So I'm enjoying that.
Well, I mean, there is some absolutely fabulous opportunities there because you've got the beginning of the Industrial Revolution too.
This is
So,
exactly what, yeah. This is exactly what, and I'm a family tree researcher, so I do have a lot of information about the development of the cotton industry in Lancashire because my ancestors worked in it. I mean, they were involved in that industrial revolution at that time. So the first book is called Every Earl Has a Silver Lining.
I like it.
The second one is called A Wild Earl Chase. And the third one is called Slow and Steady Wins the Earl. So I'm going to have fun with these 3 books. I've written about half the first book, so it'll be good. But they won't come out till 2021.
Are they romantic comedies like the Clash of the Tartans series?
Well, they'll be a bit more serious. You know, they're not. I'm not setting out to make them romantic comedies. But on the other hand, there is like in the first book, I've introduced a dog. I don't know about you, but I like to put. It's not because I'm a dog lover, but they're sort of a handy tool for dialogue. You know, the hero or the heroine has this wonderful dog that they can have a conversation with instead of talking to themselves or a servant or whatever. So in this book, I introduce normally in my books, in my medieval books, the dogs are you know, wolfhounds or some, you know, great big strapping thing. Well, in this book, the dog is a poodle.
His or hers?
It's a child's dog in the series. There's a child in the series, and children are handy too. You know, they sort of provide a little bit of not serious thinking. So you know, looking at things from a child's point of view. But this poodle, I was desperately trying to think of a name for this poodle. So I decided to name him after the hero of the Battle of Waterloo. So the poodle is called Wellington.
I think that's fabulous.
So in that way, you know, there's a little bit of comic relief, if you like, that. But they're serious stories as well. So.
Oh, fantastic! So tell me a little bit about Christmas for you. What's a typical Canadian Christmas like?
Okay. Well, of course, we're not. Just let me put a bit more light on the subject because I
Oh,
don't think
okay. No worries. I'll just pause.
Now you can see my covers at the back of it.
I was admiring all of them. That's a great wall.
Yes, it is. I love it. It's so inspirational. You know, you come in first thing in the morning in your office, it's like, yes, this is my work. You know, I did this. I started out to, as I say, with these 4 books that I split out of the 200,000 word opus, and thought, yeah, well, great. You know, I've published these books. That's fantastic. Well, it became an addiction after that. As you see, I couldn't stop. huge thing. And people say to me, well, how many books have you written? And to be quite honest, Elizabeth, I've sort of lost track. It's something in the 60 range. But if you speak to my husband, he increases it exponentially every time he tells anybody. 100 as far as one is concerned, you know. And he said, oh yes, my wife has written, you know, this astronomical number of books. But it is rather nice to have the covers.
So how long have you been writing, and what point did you go, you know what, I'm going to publish this?
Well, I like to tell people, I suppose, that I started writing when I was in primary school in England, and I entered a contest in the last year of my primary school in England, and I came third at a story writing contest. But then I have to admit that there were only 3 people entered it, so coming third really wasn't terribly impressive. But I mean, my whole career has been, like, I was a teacher and an administrative assistant. So my whole career I've been writing various sorts of things. And then I got completely absorbed into family tree research. So I wrote quite extensive books about, like, my family history, my kids, my in-laws, you know, everybody in the world. I produced these tomes of information. But I also happen to have to be related, let's say, to a cousin who is an extremely famous and very successful New York Times and USA Today best-selling author.
Wow.
And I mean, I've gobbled up her books over the years, you know, and just absolutely loved her writing. But the thought kind of niggles at the back of your mind, well, if she can write a book, so can I. I mean, it's in the genes, is it not? You know, her father and my mother were brother and sister, so why can't I write a book? So that was kind of, you know, combined with the genealogical interest in the medieval times and researching all of that. And then this desire to, yeah, well, I can write a book, kind of combined, I guess, to think, well, I can try and publish something. But having written these books and thought that there was something that could be published, I wrote, you know, I sent the manuscripts off to numerous traditional publishers at that time in 2010, 2011. And of course, guess what? The answer came back, well, there's no market whatsoever for medieval romance. I mean, no, thank you. So it was just about that time that Kindle, of course, came on the scene, and Amazon was willing to publish books, you know, free, really. I mean, you pay the royalties. So I thought, well, what is there to lose? Absolutely nothing. So I, you know, pressed the button and uploaded them, these 4 books in quick succession to Amazon, and lo and behold, I mean, at the time I thought to myself, it would be absolutely fantastic if I could sell, you know, maybe a dozen books or something, you know. Well, so I'm cracking on now for about 500,000 ebooks anyway, you know.
Wow.
And I mean, you know, you get frustrated with Amazon sometimes, but I mean, let's face it, without their, you know, foray into the publishing world, none of us would have, you know,
very true,
be where we are now.
Yeah, very, very true.
Yeah. Anyway, you would ask me about Christmas, and I kind of avoided that question. Want to go back to that? I can go back to that if you want.
Yeah, it just wraps things up nicely for O Night Divine.
Yes, that's right. Well, all of our children now are grown and have children of their own, and none of them live close to us. Several years. My husband and I have been, you know, just the 2 of us for Christmas. So we've done various sorts of things. He has a tendency to always catch the flu at Christmas time. So we quite often sit at either end of the table, you know, trying not to breathe on each other.
Oh.
But the last year or so, we've actually gone on a plant-based diet. My husband had a heart attack about 3 years ago, so we went on this plant-based diet. And we've really kind of enjoyed our Christmas dinner without the turkey a heck of a lot more than we used to. At least I, as the cook, cooking the Christmas dinner, I've enjoyed it more. And so that's basically what we do normally. Sometimes we'll go to a hotel and have Christmas dinner at a hotel, but sometimes just the two of us will do a Christmas thing. And of course, we always have to have the Christmas crackers, and the party hats.
Oh, yeah.
My husband is Canadian, so he thinks the whole thing is just some crazy British thing, which it is, of course. But in my story, A Thrill of Hope, I actually have Christmas crackers, and the party hats and the Brussels sprouts and the Christmas dinner and all that good stuff.
Yes, yeah, no, there's got to be Christmas crackers and the hats and the daft jokes and
yes. I have the daft
little
jokes. Well, yeah, I have all of that and the little toys and all of that in the Christmas crackers, because of course that was a Victorian, that sort of began in the Victorian era. And in the very beginning of my book, they play the Christmas laughing game. So they have to laugh without laughing. They have to laugh without actually dissolving into a fit of giggles.
Good fun to research. Great fun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because some of the traditions are the same and some of them have changed.
Yes, that's right. And of course, there's always the perennial problem of the Brussels sprouts being too hard to actually get your knife through them.
They've got to be roasted just right.
Yes. Yeah. So I have a little aside in my story about, if the British troops in the Crimea had actually had Brussels sprouts as their ammunition, the war might have ended a lot faster than it.
I love it.
So on the one hand, while the story has this catastrophe of this train, being destroyed, on the other hand, there's a few lighter bits in it too. And I have to say, Elizabeth, I love your magazine, your e-zine, or whatever it is you call it.
Thank you.
How do you do that? I'm intrigued with how it all comes together.
I'm very fortunate to have a gifted husband. He does all the layout for me. Duncan and I were former newspaper journalists, and Duncan was a sub-editor for a time. So publication layout is one of the things he does really well. And it's easy from my point of view. I get all of my author friends to write for me.
Well, it always looks so wonderfully professional. It's a joy to read. It's really, it's quite easily on a par with any of the other sort of digital magazines that I get anyway. I think it's really well done.
We always have a lot of fun putting that together, and the December one is going to be a big Christmas edition. I really enjoy doing a wrap up of all the Christmas stories that are about, and it also gives me an opportunity to try something different. So my serialized short story is a contemporary, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that unfolds, and eventually I might pull that together and do a bit of an expansion to it and release that as a separate title. But it's interesting. You get ideas for things that don't necessarily work in the series that you're writing at the moment, so you've got to put that aside. And the magazine gives me the opportunity to have a dabble in something a little different.
Right. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah. I really enjoy, I was steeped in the medieval stuff for a long time. My initial medieval series, of course, has 12 books to it. And then, subsequent offshoot series of it. But on the other hand, I really enjoyed, one of the other Christmas stories I've written for another collection is all, actually two of them are set in around the Jacobite rebellion of 1715, which again was a completely you know, different era for me, and I enjoyed that, researching all of that. I think that's the fun of historical romance, is delving into, you know, finding these bits of trivia and sticking them in a book.
You're right, because it always, for me, it always starts with a what if, and then that what if just expands, and then before you know it, you've got the bones of a really good story, all from a real historical fact, and then sort of expanding out from there, just like your Christmas story.
Yeah, well, that's one of the I mean, you know, I call myself a pantser, but on the other hand, I mean, you do have this historical framework that you're sort of, you know, you're more or less bound in the parameters, because I like to try and keep it as historically accurate as I can. Although I'm sure I put words into the mouth of William the Conqueror that he never actually spoke. But you know, so long as you've got that end goal, you know, sort of where things are going to end up. But the sky's the limit in the meantime as to what might transpire in your imagination. Sometimes when I read my own, you probably find this, when you read your stuff that you've written, you know, years ago, you're like, God, that was a great idea. Where did I get that from?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that happens.
And you know, you probably agree with me when I tell you, like today I got this email from I just spent a week on the ultimate historical romance readers group on Facebook. It was my week to post on that. And there were a lot of names of people commenting that I didn't recognize. You know, I mean, certain names come up all the time that you know that they're your readers. There were quite a number of them that I didn't recognize. And one of them sent me a really very complimentary message today. And it was so uplifting, you know, to hear somebody say how much they enjoy your stories, and they think you're a great writer. You know, you think, oh, that's fantastic. It makes you feel good.
That feedback is so important, and because writing is such an intimate process, because you're spending so much time in your head, you're focused on putting it down on paper, then to get wonderful feedback from readers, to say how much that resonated with them, or
Yes.
how much that it made them laugh, or tell me more about this other character. It's nothing short of magic.
It's a very solitary endeavor, this whole we're in. I mean, I end up many a time, I'm just talking to my characters, you know. That's why when I get the chance to talk to a real person like you, as I talk my head off, you know, because you're sort of used to just talking to these characters. And when somebody tells you, particularly, I find it particularly moving when somebody, you know, who's been really sick, or, you know, had some life-threatening surgery or whatever, and they tell you your books helped them through it. That keeps you writing. It's like, well, yeah, because sometimes you feel like just abandoning the whole process. You know, nobody's reading these books, but they are, and it means a lot to people. So you keep writing.
That's it. That's it. I have so enjoyed our chat. It's been great fun, and I'm looking forward to doing more of these.
Yes.
So
I think it's a great idea. I mean, we've got this technology, you know, I mean, we may as well use, I mean, you were just a name to me. Well, no, you're not. You're, you know, I've seen you and I've chatted with you, and well, it's been a kind of one-sided chat, because, you know, I tend to, as I said, talk my head off. But I mean, I think it's really important. This is one of the things I find about, you know, the indie community, is that we're very willing to share. And I think if you see somebody and talk with them personally, it makes it all the better, all the easier to do.
It does, and I've found that the Dragonblade community have been really supportive as well, and gosh, that's good. That is so good. Thank you very much indeed.
Oh, it was lovely to chat with you, Elizabeth. Yeah.
And we'll do it again. I promise we'll do it
Yes.
again very, very soon.
Yeah. Why not?
Okay, you have a good night and take care,
Yes.
and I will catch you again on social media.
Yes. And stay safe.
I will, you too. Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.